Always remember, if you're in the top 10 of Billboard, I have a rhyme to battle.
KRS-One didn't just battle rappers. He drew lines between culture and commerce, respect and what he saw as disrespect. While most artists chased collaborations, KRS-One walked away from them, sometimes over principle and sometimes after killing you on a rap freestyle.
I'm above your average. When I see you and your man, I'm thinking Satan's marriage.
From a rivalry that shaped hip-hop's origin story to conflicts that divided generations of artists, his decisions have left a lasting mark on the culture. These are 7 artists KRS-One refused to work with. And the first name on this list didn't just clash with KRS-One. He helped spark one of the most important battles hip-hop has ever seen. At the top of the list is Shan. Long before streaming numbers and viral diss tracks, hip-hop was still defining itself. It was young, raw, and fiercely territorial. Every borough wanted recognition. Every crew wanted credit. And in the late 1980s, that hunger for identity exploded into a rivalry that would shape the culture forever. At the center of it stood MC Shan and KRS-One. MC Shan, a key member of the legendary Juice Crew, released a track called The Bridge.
You will hear me say, let me tell you a little story about where they come from. The Bridge.
The record celebrated Queensbridge, its environment, and the hip-hop movement growing within it. But as the song gained attention, many listeners interpreted it as a bold claim that hip-hop began in Queensbridge. Whether that was Shan's intention or not, the perception spread quickly. And once it reached the Bronx, KRS-One took it personally. To KRS-One, the Bronx wasn't just another borough, it was the birthplace of hip-hop. It was where the culture was born, where DJs and MCs first began shaping the sound that would eventually dominate the world. So when The Bridge seemed to challenge that narrative, he responded the only way battle MCs knew how, with a record. South Bronx dropped like a warning shot. The track didn't just defend the Bronx's role in hip-hop history, it aggressively asserted it. The lyrics made it clear that KRS-One wasn't interested in sharing credit for the culture's origins. When asked what his first reaction when he heard the song, Shan said he was like, "Kill that noise."
What was my reaction? Kill that noise.
Then came the escalation. KRS-One followed up with The Bridge Is Over, a record that took the rivalry to another level entirely. The song didn't just target MC Shan, it dismantled the entire narrative surrounding Queensbridge's place in hip-hop's origin story. With sharp lyrics and a relentless delivery, KRS-One turned the feud into a defining moment for both artists. But here's where the story gets deeper. Years later, KRS-One revealed that there was more behind his response than just the song itself. Before Boogie Down Productions became known, he and his partner Scott LaRock had approached a radio station with a record they believed in. The track was dismissed. According to KRS-One, they had an impression that the producer said their tape was whack.
That Mr. Magic said our tape was whack.
When they later heard The Bridge, the frustration from that rejection resurfaced.
Magic dissed us. He wouldn't even give us the time. He wouldn't even. Who he think he is?
According to KRS-One's own accounts, the Queens versus Bronx debate became a way to push back not just against MC Shan, but against the industry figures who had overlooked them. What started as a disagreement over hip-hop's birthplace turned into a full-scale cultural battle. Diss tracks flew, crews took sides, and the rivalry became one of the earliest examples of how powerful lyrical conflict could be within the genre. Over time, the tension between MC Shan and KRS-One cooled. Both artists eventually acknowledged each other's contributions. But despite moments of reconciliation, they never built a lasting collaborative relationship. The history between them was too significant, too defining, and that feud set the tone for everything that followed. Because once KRS-One established himself as a defender of hip-hop's authenticity, he didn't stop there. As the culture evolved and new artists rose to fame, he continued to challenge anything he believed strayed too far from its roots. Which is exactly what happened when hip-hop entered the commercial mainstream. And the next clash would involve one of the biggest stars of the early 2000s. Nelly takes the second position. By the time the early 2000s arrived, hip-hop had transformed into a global phenomenon. Radio hits dominated charts, music videos reached international audiences, and one of the artists leading that wave of commercial success was Nelly. With his debut album achieving massive sales and crossover appeal, Nelly quickly became one of the most recognizable faces in rap. His sound blended catchy hooks with mainstream accessibility, creating hits that dominated airwaves and clubs alike. For many fans, it represented hip-hop's expanding reach. But for KRS-One, it raised serious questions about where the culture was heading. At this stage in his career, KRS-One had embraced his role as a teacher within hip-hop. He spoke openly about authenticity, responsibility, and the importance of preserving the culture's original spirit. So when pop-influenced rap began dominating the charts, he didn't stay silent. On a track called Clear M Out, KRS-One criticized what he saw as the commercialization of hip-hop. He threw a sub specifically at Nelly and tried to call him commercial.
He was trying to call me commercial, and I was like, nigga, you did the Sprite commercial? I ain't never did no commercial.
Then came the response. Nelly delivered lines on a remix of Rock the Mic that many interpreted as a direct shot at the veteran MC. The lyrics suggested frustration with older artists criticizing newer success stories. And once those lines circulated, the situation escalated into something far more public. KRS-One didn't just respond with words. He called for a boycott. In a dramatic move that stunned many in the industry, he urged fans to avoid purchasing Nelly's album. He framed the boycott as a stand against corporate control and what he believed was the exploitation of hip-hop culture by major record labels. To him, this wasn't just about one artist. It was about sending a message to the industry as a whole. The outcome, however, didn't unfold the way he hoped. Nelly's album still dominated charts. Hit singles became unavoidable. The boycott failed to slow the commercial momentum. Eventually, both artists moved on, and the tension faded. According to Nelly, they spoke, and Nelly acknowledged KRS as his GOAT.
It was explained, and I told him, I was like, yo, man, I love you, cuz. Like, you inspired, you a GOAT.
But the episode revealed something important about KRS-One's approach. When he believed hip-hop's identity was at risk, he was willing to challenge anyone, even artists at the peak of mainstream success. And that willingness to stand on principle didn't just affect newer stars. It also shaped his relationships with figures from the culture's earliest days. Because before the conflict with Nelly, before the debates about commercialization, there was another name tied directly to the rivalry that started it all. A producer whose presence made collaboration nearly impossible. And his connection to KRS-One runs deeper than most fans realize. This leads us to number 3, Marley Marl. If MC Sean represented the face of the Bridge Wars, Marley Marl represented its foundation. As one of the most influential producers of the early hip-hop era and a central figure within the Juice Crew, Marley Marl played a crucial role in shaping the sound that stood opposite Boogie Down Productions. His work helped define the musical identity of Queensbridge, and through tracks like The Bridge, he became directly connected to the narrative that challenged the Bronx's place in hip-hop history. For KRS-One, that connection mattered. The rivalry between Boogie Down Productions and the Juice Crew wasn't limited to MCS trading lyrics. It extended to producers, DJs, and radio personalities who shaped how hip-hop was heard and understood. Marley Marl's influence within that network placed him squarely on the opposing side of the conflict. But the tension went beyond music. Before Boogie, Down Productions gained recognition. KRS-One and Scott LaRock had attempted to break into the scene with their own material. According to later interviews, their early record was dismissed by key figures in the industry. That rejection left a lasting impression. So when The Bridge gained attention, it became more than just another song. It became a symbol of the system they felt had overlooked them. As diss tracks escalated and crews took sides, Marley Marl became one of the central figures associated with the opposing camp. The rivalry between their circles grew intense, fueled by lyrical exchanges and competing claims about hip-hop's origins and direction. And by now, a pattern was forming, but nothing shocked the hip-hop community quite like what happened next. Because one night in New York, words turned into something much more intense. And after that moment, collaboration was no longer just unlikely, it was impossible. This takes us to number 4, PM Dawn. Respect has always been a cornerstone of hip-hop culture. For KRS-One, it wasn't just a value. It was a rule that shaped how he moved, spoke, and responded to anyone who questioned his place in the culture. So when his credibility as a teacher within hip-hop was challenged publicly, the reaction was swift and unforgettable. During a magazine interview, Prince B of PM Dawn made comments that questioned KRS-One's role as an educator in hip-hop. He wondered aloud what KRS-One was actually teaching and suggested that some artists who positioned themselves as cultural leaders might be overstating their influence. Those remarks quickly circulated through the hip-hop community and reached KRS-One. They did not go unnoticed. On January 13, 1992, inside New York's Sound Factory, tensions reached a boiling point. PM Dawn was performing on stage when KRS-One arrived with members of his crew. According to eyewitness accounts from DJ Kid Capri and others present, what followed became one of the most talked about moments in hip-hop history. As the performance continued, KRS-One and his crew moved toward the stage. Within moments, the situation escalated. The microphone was taken, performers were pushed aside, and control of the stage shifted. Then the music changed. South Bronx blasted through the speakers as KRS-One addressed the crowd, instantly altering the atmosphere inside the venue. Witnesses later recalled that when KRS-One left the club, much of the audience followed him out, leaving the next performer with almost no crowd. The incident spread rapidly through the hip-hop world. Some viewed it as a bold statement about respect, while others saw it as an unnecessary escalation. Days later, KRS-One admitted publicly that he had allowed his temper to get the better of him. Yet not every conflict ended in permanent distance. Because the next name on this list proves that even after tension, rivalry, and public controversy, respect can still reshape the story. And what happened next would surprise even longtime hip-hop fans. Sliding into the 5th spot is LL Cool J, KRS-One, and LL Cool J. Both emerged from that same competitive environment. Both built reputations as formidable lyricists. Both carried themselves as dominant voices within the genre. And for years, subtle tension existed between them, fueled by the natural rivalry that comes with being among hip-hop's elite. But things never truly crossed the line. Then one night, during a live performance in Pittsburgh, everything changed. KRS-One invited a fan on stage to rap. The moment began as a typical showcase of lyrical competition. The fan stepped forward, delivered his lines, and attempted to challenge the headliner.
Beat you down, beat you down, beat you down.
In the heat of the freestyle exchange, KRS-One fired back with his own rhymes. As the battle intensified, he referenced LL Cool J in a way that caught many listeners off guard. In the flow of the moment, he labeled LL as whack.
My man walked up with a red Kango hat, like he ain't trying to be on LL's dick and LL's whack.
The comments spread quickly online. Clips circulated. Fans began speculating about a possible clash between two of hip-hop's most respected figures. Social media buzzed with anticipation. Some believed a legendary battle might be on the horizon. Others worried that a long-standing mutual respect between the two artists had finally broken down. But what happened next changed the narrative completely. Just days later, during another performance, KRS-One addressed the situation publicly. Standing before the crowd, he acknowledged the remark and clarified that it had been said in the heat of battle without intention. The moment revealed something important about KRS-One's character. While he was known for defending his principles and engaging in intense conflicts when necessary, he also understood the value of respect. When he believed he had crossed a line, he corrected himself publicly, and in doing so, he reinforced the bond between two legends rather than allowing tension to grow. Even with that respect, collaboration never became a defining part of their relationship. Their paths remained separate, shaped by different creative directions and eras within hip-hop. And as the culture evolved, KRS-One found himself engaging in a different kind of conflict entirely. Not one fueled by diss tracks or public confrontations, but one rooted in philosophy. Because the next name on this list represents a clash of ideas rather than personalities. And sometimes, those are the most difficult differences to bridge. Number 6 is Talib Kweli. By the time hip-hop entered the new millennium, the landscape had changed dramatically. The culture had expanded across continents. New voices emerged with fresh perspectives, and among those voices was Talib Kweli, an artist known for his thoughtful lyrics and commitment to socially conscious themes. On the surface, Talib Kweli and KRS-One seemed aligned. Both emphasized education within hip-hop. Both spoke about community, awareness, and the responsibility that came with influence. Both viewed rap as more than entertainment. It was a platform for dialogue and reflection. Yet, despite those similarities, philosophical differences began to surface. As hip-hop evolved, debates emerged about how the culture should move forward. Should it preserve its original structures and values, or should it adapt freely to new sounds and global influences? Through interviews, panel discussions, and public conversations, KRS-One and Talib Kweli occasionally expressed differing views on these questions. Their disagreements weren't explosive. There were no diss tracks or public confrontations. Instead, they took the form of intellectual exchanges, conversations about generational change, discussions about authenticity, reflections on what it meant to teach and represent hip-hop in a rapidly changing world. For observers, the tension was subtle but noticeable. When two respected voices within the same cultural space hold different visions for its future, collaboration can become complicated. It's not about personal conflict, it's about alignment. And when creative philosophies don't fully match, working together can feel forced rather than natural. Over time, both artists continued to pursue their own paths, engaging with audiences in ways that reflected their individual perspectives. There was mutual recognition of each other's contributions, but no major joint project ever emerged. The distance wasn't fueled by hostility, it was shaped by differing interpretations of what hip-hop should be, and that quiet, philosophical divide points towards something even larger. Because beyond individual disagreements lies a generational shift that continues to influence the entire genre, a shift that has sparked debates about authenticity, artistry, and the meaning of hip-hop in the modern era. At the center of that debate stands one of the most influential artists of the streaming age. And while there's no explosive feud attached to his name, his presence represents everything KRS-One has spent decades questioning. Finally, at number 7 is Drake. As hip-hop moved deeper into the digital age, its boundaries expanded. Streaming platforms reshaped how music reached audiences. Genres blended more freely than ever before, and artists began building global fan bases that stretched far beyond traditional hip-hop communities. Few figures embody that shift more than Drake. With chart-topping hits, international recognition, and a sound that blends rap with melodic and pop elements, Drake represents a new era of mainstream success. For many fans, his influence reflects hip-hop's evolution into a dominant global genre. But for others, it raises questions about how far the culture has moved from its original foundations. KRS-One has often spoken about authenticity within hip-hop. Throughout interviews and lectures, he has addressed topics such as ghostwriting controversies, commercialization, and the importance of maintaining cultural identity. While he hasn't engaged in a direct feud with Drake, his commentary on modern rap frequently highlights a clear generational divide. To KRS-One, hip-hop is rooted in community, storytelling, and lyrical integrity. It carries a history that should be understood and respected. When he speaks about the direction of contemporary rap, he often emphasizes the need to preserve those foundational elements. His perspective reflects decades of experience within the culture's early development. Drake, on the other hand, operates within a landscape shaped by streaming metrics, global audiences, and evolving musical styles. His success demonstrates how hip-hop has expanded beyond its original boundaries, reaching listeners who may not share the same historical connection to its origins. This contrast doesn't create a personal feud. There are no diss tracks or direct confrontations linking the two artists, but it does represent a philosophical distance. And many observers believe that distance makes collaboration between them unlikely. It's not about personal dislike, it's about perspective. For KRS-One, hip-hop remains a cultural movement with responsibilities tied to its history. For artists representing the modern mainstream, it functions within a broader entertainment industry where innovation and accessibility often take priority. Those differing viewpoints shape how artists approach their craft and who they choose to work with. When you step back and look at the full picture, one thing becomes clear. KRS-One didn't simply refuse to work with certain artists because of ego or rivalry. Each situation connected to something deeper, something tied to his understanding of what hip-hop is supposed to represent. With MC Shan, the conflict centered on history and cultural ownership. With Nelly, it focused on commercialization and industry influence. With Marley Marl, it reflected rivalries that defined entire movements. With PM Dawn, it came down to respect and public perception. With LL Cool J, it showed that even in moments of tension, respect could override competition. With Talib Kweli, it revealed how philosophical differences can shape creative distance. And with Drake, it highlighted the ongoing debate between tradition and evolution within hip-hop. So now the conversation turns to you. Were these refusals necessary to protect the culture, or did they prevent collaborations that could have changed it forever? The debate continues.